This violence is obviously translating into significant health concerns across the Americas. The Pan American Health Organization put it bluntly, saying that homophobia represents a threat to public health in Latin America. That's true for all of the Americas, North America, the Caribbean as well. Obviously, the homophobia limits our ability to address HIV/AIDS, but it actually has far deeper repercussions, leaving the LGBT community less healthy, more excluded, marginalized, and that's a public health concern across the board. So what can we do to start to address these concerns? I want to talk a little bit about some tolerance programs that I think are interesting and worth at least mentioning, and encourage you to take a look at them more closely. Brazil and Mexico, I think, in the Americas, have adopted some of the most important tolerance programs. And they've been quite strong and have focused specifically on sexual orientation and gender identity in both cases, as well as they've had broader tolerance programs. But they've instituted specific tolerance programs for LGBT communities. Other countries in the Americas, Argentina, Colombia, I know Peru, Bolivia, El Salvador, a couple of others, have instituted some tolerance programs as part of HIV/AIDS outreach. But I'd like to focus a little bit on Brazil and Mexico. And the one that I know a little bit better that I just want to talk about briefly is the Brazil program, which is Brazil Without Homophobia. It's been a really pretty remarkable campaign. There's a lot of literature on it, and I'd encourage you to look at it. I won't go into it fully here, but it was launched back in 2004, a national campaign. It came up through a collaborative process with nonprofit organizations across Brazil. They came up with sort of 53 action points, and they worked with 20 ministries to develop plans to implement those action points. That whole process led up to a national plan that's come out this year in 2009 that will continue to address LGBT concerns across Brazil. I think the important part of this plan was that it created an amazing platform to reach out to LGBT communities, to encourage LGBT communities to interact and relate to themselves in a better way. I mean, many lesbian groups don't necessarily work with or know transgender or gay groups. I mean, the community itself is not as unified as one sometimes thinks. And so this process actually helped the community to create more unity and agree on priorities and get to know each other in a way that's really crucial in terms of setting a positive agenda going forward. It also, this program was really incredible because it allowed the LGBT community to build alliances with other communities, with the Jewish community in Brazil, with the Afro-descendant community in Brazil. Much of this program actually grew out of the preparatory work for the UN conference against racism in Durban in 2001. So this process allowed the LGBT community to reach out to other communities and build those alliances that are so important. Mexico's program has also been really significant, and out of time I won't go into it, but I commend you to look at both of those programs. Broadly, just quickly, I'd say, outside of the region, the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which includes 56 countries in all of Europe. It's sort of Europe broadly interpreted to include Eastern Europe, Southeast Europe, Western Europe. They have a very important tolerance focus through their Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. I'd also suggest folks who are interested to take a look at that. And they focus in particular on hate crimes in Europe, and have had a real focus on hate crimes in Eastern Europe, although we're seeing actually an increasing trend of hate crimes in Western Europe as well. There have been a number of alarming incidents in the Netherlands, which has always been considered to have very progressive laws. And the OSCE also focuses on working with countries to collect statistics on LGBT-related hate crimes. And here's a point I really want to underscore, that the collection of statistics is incredibly important. Because without those statistics, it's hard to look at patterns. It's hard to address national or even local policies that really respond to the need. I know that many countries have philosophical concerns with collecting statistics on the basis of sexual orientation, just as they do often on the basis of race or ethnicity. But really, I think many of the lessons in terms of race and ethnicity apply to the LGBT community as well. Without statistics, it's hard to make the arguments we need to make or deliver the programs we need to deliver. So that statistical collection is important. As far as I know, I believe the only countries in the Americas that are really making an effort to collect those statistics of LGBT hate crimes are in North America, Canada, and the U.S. do collect those statistics, and then Mexico and Brazil, again, as part of their tolerance programming. So that's an important point. The European Union, and I won't go into it, also has had a really remarkable tolerance program. This one focuses on a whole range of tolerance issues, not just lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender issues. But it's been a remarkable program. They have sort of these buses that go to every country that will promote tolerance discussions in different capitals, and they've invested a lot of money in it. So what are the conclusions from those tolerance programs? Very last points. That there is increasing recognition of violence against gay communities, transgender communities starting, but often the violence against lesbian communities is being underreported. Much of that violence is not as open. It often is domestic violence or in the home, and it's not being reported as much and not being recognized, so that's a concern. Also, I think one of the lessons from these tolerance programs, and we've been talking about youth, is that they have to get into the schools. They have to they have to be directed at youth, and they have to realize that youth who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender are most susceptible to violence, most excluded in society. The levels of violence and exclusion for transgender youth are off the charts. And once they are subjected to that level of violence and exclusion, they're essentially cut off from society for good in many countries. The final issue is that obviously when you start to look at the patterns, gender identity violence really is standing out, and we need to have more discussions about how to address that violence. So with that, I think we'll...
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. I think that is pretty evident, the importance that law and laws, especially progressive laws, plays in trying to address these challenges. But as Mark was clearly pointing out, this is not enough. I mean, the implementation of the laws is very important, laws themselves, but going beyond that, education, all these different programs of tolerance programs that he mentioned, which it's valid also for the Jewish community as well. One point that was very interesting that was repeated by Sean and Mark is in terms of having real information, statistics, in terms of being able to provide that to the policymakers and the ones that make the decisions so they can really make those laws pretty progressive and the way they should be.